Morning, I'm going to start a new little devotional on a survey of the books of the Bible, a brief survey of each book from Genesis to Revelation. Um, we'll take a look at each one individually, and they'll just be, it's more like a little outline of each book, so it's not going to give any details or anything, just an outline of each book, and hopefully that it will inspire you to go read more. And so the first book, of course, is the book of Genesis. Uh, Genesis, the word Genesis comes from a Greek word actually. It means origins. There are two origins uh, detailed in the book of Genesis, the origin of everything. God created heaven and earth and everything in it. And it's also about the origin of the Hebrew people. So let's take a look at the outline of the book of Genesis. Right from the beginning is the creation. God created everything. And then we see that God created man and woman. He created Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve sinned, of course. And we see in chapter 3, we see the fall of man, where they had sinned. Chapter 4 tells us about Adam and Eve's sons, two of Adam and Eve's sons, Cain and Abel. Abel and Cain had brought offerings to God, and God liked Abel's better than he did Cain. Cain got jealous and, of course, killed Abel. Uh, Chapter 5 tells us about the descendants of Abraham. You see, chapter 6 is the corruption of mankind. Mankind becomes evil and corrupt, which leads us up to the flood and Noah in chapter 7. And chapter 8, we see that the flood subsides. And in chapter 9, God gives mankind, through Noah, the covenant of the rainbow. God promises he will never destroy the earth again with water. And in chapter 10, we have the descendants of Noah, genealogy of Noah. In chapter 11, we read about the Tower of Babel. That people had gotten all up in themselves again and decided they were going to build a tower to heaven. And God stopped that by confusing their languages. And we also see in chapter 11, we see the genealogy to the descendants of Shem. And then we see in chapter 12 that Abraham starts his journey to Egypt. 13, the Bible starts talking about and tells us about Abraham and his nephew Lot. In 14, we see the War of the Kings. In 15, Abraham is promised a son. Abraham and his wife Sarah were old and they didn't believe it, but they did end up having a son, Isaac. And 16 talks about Sarah and Hagar because Sarah didn't believe that she was going to be able to conceive. This is before God told her, and that Sarah decided that Abraham should have a descendant by her maid Hagar. That's in chapter 16. And in chapter 17, we have Abraham and the covenant of circumcision. 18 is the birth of Isaac, which had been promised. 19, we see the doom of Sodom. Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed. They're very wicked. They're part of the 5 cities of the plain that were destroyed. And we see Abraham's treachery. But we also see in chapter 21 that Isaac is indeed born, son of Abraham. In chapter 22, we see the offering of Isaac. God had told Abraham to offer his son up as a sacrifice to him, and Abraham does. Of course, God stops him. He just wanted to test him, and he found out that Abraham actually was very faithful. Then we have, in 23, we have the death and burial of Sarah. 24, we get a bride for Isaac. Abraham's son Isaac going to get married. And 25, we see Abraham's death. Abraham dies. And we see his son Isaac settles in a place called Gerar. And Jacob. Now we had Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham had Isaac. Isaac had Jacob. And now we have Jacob. This is the deception to his brother. And Jacob is sent away. Jacob dreams. And then Jacob meets Rachel. And in chapter 30, we see the sons of Jacob. 31, Jacob leaves secretly for Canaan. And Jacob in 32 talks about Jacob's fear of his brother Esau because he had tricked him and had stolen his birthright and stuff like that. He's not happy with it. And so in 33, Jacob meets Esau, and of course they get to be brothers and friends again. Then we have the treachery of Jacob's sons. And we have Jacob moves to Bethel in chapter 35. And in chapter 36, Esau moves. His brother. And one of Jacob's sons was Joseph. And Joseph has a dream in chapter 37. And talk about chapter 38 talks about Judah and Tamar. And that's the other brothers of Judah and his daughter. You see, Joseph ends up in Egypt because his brothers had sold him to a caravan. They were very happy with him. And so he ends up in Egypt, but he becomes very successful in Egypt. We see this in 39. And chapter 40 talks about how he became that. Pharaoh has a dream, and Joseph interprets the dream in 41. Then we see that there's a famine, and Joseph's brothers end up coming to Egypt in chapter 42. Chapter 43, they return to Egypt, and in chapter 44, the brothers are coming back. All the brothers of Joseph are coming back. And then Joseph, even though his brothers had thrown him into the well and had fished him out and sold him into slavery, actually, to the end up in Egypt, Joseph deals very kindly with his brothers. He forgives them. We see Jacob then moves to Esau, Jacob moves to Egypt, and Jacob's family settles in the land of Goshen, which is in the northern part of Egypt. This is leading up, of course, to the Exodus, because the Israelites, they multiply hugely and they become a threat to the Pharaoh of Egypt. 48 talks about Israel's last days. Israel is the same as Jacob. Jacob becomes Israel. At 49, we see Israel's prophecy concerning his sons. And that, in chapter 50, we have the death of Israel, Jacob. And this will lead us up to the book of Exodus. What happened is, like I said, that the Hebrew people had multiplied immensely in the land of Egypt, became a threat. The Pharaoh perceived them as said and put them into slavery, and they were in slavery for 400 years or so. And then they keep calling to God, and God brings them out. We'll see that in the book of Exodus next.